Hello, this is George Senda, the guy from Pittsburgh, the real, official, authentic, original, the one, the only, the official, the guy from Pittsburgh, except no cheesy YouTube commentators, imposters, or deniers of the F word as per the elections. Well, we've seen it now. The fed up American voter, the Trump supporter, with Chuck Schumer saying it was a conspiracy. They drove the corrupt Democrats and the corrupt rhinos and the corrupt swamp dwellers out of the Capitol and took it over while the Capitol Police and the federal police fled in terror. And they got to the Senate floor. Now some are saying goodbye $2,000 stimulus checks. That may happen, but I don't think. I could be wrong. I don't think the Senate and the House are going to be that mean-spirited. But there's probably going to be an overreaction. And, of course, the news media are calling these people rioters. In the French Revolution, they rioted. They got fed up with their government. They got fed up with the Queen saying, let them eat cake when there was no bread or cake or food to eat. Well, your Legion, this is not an act of treason. I don't even think it's even an act of, it's an act of perhaps insurrection, but there's only so much the American people can stand. And I don't care about the Legion of a fat guy in Erie who spits into a bucket. So you can't get my channel taken down for saying what is true. Even though there are many that allege that none of this ever happened, that there are only 2 dead voters in Georgia, as the Secretary of State said in a phone call. Everybody heard that phone call. They won't allow, and the sister of Stephanie Abrams, a judge in Georgia, refused to have the election rolls purged, saying she was impartial, and yet she found in favor of Stephanie Abrams' own organization that started this whole mess in Georgia by changing the law illegally. The legislature decides the law, not the governor, not the Secretary of State, but they made an illegal agreement with her to change the voting laws. So don't tell me this is a coup. It's not an act of war. No one went to war. The Capitol Police shot one person. So you could say the Capitol Police went to war against the protesters. But we saw Antifa riot in almost every major city and burn and loot for months, and nothing was done about it. And yet they were called peaceful protesters. 74 million people voted for Trump. And in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, we saw voting machines change huge blocks of Trump votes to Biden. We saw a suitcase under a table in DeKalb County in Georgia suddenly appear when they had a water leak. And then they found that it was a bathroom, a urinal leaking. And they evacuated the building. And then suddenly the poll workers go back in, and one poll worker who is supposed to be a Democratic operative starts feeding these votes from this suitcase into the machine. And according to Trump, fed them in 3 times. According to the Secretary of State, she only fed them in once. But the point is, they weren't certified. There was no one watching her do this. No Democratic poll watchers, no Republican poll watchers. And every court in the land, all the way to the Supreme Court, including Justice Roberts, who screamed at the other justices saying, I'm not going to let them riot outside my house, has refused to listen to Trump's contention that the election was stolen. So you may choose to believe what you will. The people have spoken. The people have gone to the Capitol, to the seat of government, and they've said, we've had enough. And they stormed the barricades. They got onto the Senate floor. Now, they did not, as far as I can determine, do any vandalism, although there are reports of devices being left in the building. The police fled in fear. The National Guard was not called out. They have been called out now. The mayor of Washington has a curfew set. Whether or not this Trump-supporting group will honor that, I don't know. But usually Trump rallies, Trump people go home. Whereas Antifa go out and beat the Trump supporters. And you can look right on the screen. Meet Kevin's been following all of this. I'm going to, there goes my mouse. I'm going to turn this around. I don't know if you can see the screen. But there's what it looks like. So, when do the people who say we were cheated, when is that an act of treason? When they've had enough of corrupt officials, of millionaires in Congress who vote $600 checks, and yet they do a tax bill that rewards Chevron and Amazon and other multi-million-dollar and billion-dollar companies with huge tax breaks. Chevron got $181 million in tax refunds. And they throw the people a bone of a $1,200 check or a $600 check while people are starving, people out of work, people in danger of losing their homes and their apartments, people dying. Contra Costa County today said people are being denied the vaccines. They're dying in my county. They're not getting the vaccine. They're being left to die. And Harry Truman, as I've said before many times, show me a politician who's rich and I'll show you a crook. And the Georgia election, I've seen very little evidence of any fraud in the runoff, but pro-Trumpists took pictures of ballots being shredded this morning before the votes were even fully counting. They still got the military votes to count. They got the overseas votes to count. They had to be in by Friday. They started shredding ballots again. They love to shred the evidence. And the police showed up and tried to confiscate the cameras from the people. Because it's suppression of the news we're talking about. It's suppression of the truth we're talking about. And we used to have a press that would investigate. There are allegations of fraud. There are allegations of wrongdoing. There are allegations of fake voters, dead voters, people who no longer live in the state, voter rolls that judges refuse and election officials refuse to purge. California purged all their dead voters. California purged people that no longer live in the county or the state. Local election officials here have purged the rolls. But the Democrats fight the purging of the rolls because every vote they can use to steal any local, state, or federal election they want. In an honest election, if this had been an honest election, and Biden had won, Trump voters would have said, well, we lost. We'll have to work toward 2024. And in the meantime, we have the congressional elections in 2 years. We'll take back the Senate. We'll take back the House. But that didn't happen. And no credible news organization except Newsmax and Sky News Australia is saying that the F word, that we're not allowed to comment on YouTube because they censor every conservative. Funny thing is, they don't censor Newsmax. They don't censor Sky News. The big boys, they don't censor. But they got lawyers behind them. Democratic representative switches to GOP. So maybe they're abandoning their party. That just came from Western Journal. So we have Democrats fleeing the sinking ship. Now, someone posted a protester and with a caption on Twitter, say goodbye to $2,000 stimulus checks. And then another picture that was funny, Capitol Police protect Capitol. Picture of a Capitol door with a Frito in it, no padlock. That was funny. Beat Kevin posted that too. And you have a Capitol cop with 3 or 4 stars like he's a general backing up from the mob, taking his nightstick out and threatening to beat them. Then he calls for help and 4 cops show up and a news reporter. They're on the Senate floor because they couldn't allow this to continue. They were going to certify the electors, and the Arizona senator said, no, this is not right. This election in Arizona was not conducted properly. Another senator said the same thing in his state. But the protesters, they're calling them rioters. They're calling them a mob. Where were they calling the Antifa people rioters? They weren't. Where were they calling them a mob? They weren't. They were peaceful protesters for a month. They burned and looted. And the Trump rallies in Washington, D.C., they attacked little children. They attacked people eating dinner peacefully with fireworks and physical force. But you don't hear the leftist media say anything about that. So, right away, immediately, I get a evil troll come in, threaten to take down my channel for speaking the truth. The truth that the trolls don't want to hear. Because a lot of these trolls are Obama leftists. They've been going after me for 20 years. When I was a conservative moderator, co-moderator on a conservative discussion forum. They couldn't stand it that I was a conservative Republican. It has nothing to do with Republicanism. It has to do with standing up for the Constitution and the law and what's right. We have laws in this country. We have election laws that should be followed and not ignored. We have voting laws that should be followed. We have judges that should not be corrupt, that should allow a fair hearing and let both sides be heard, but they've only let one side be heard or won't hear it at all. And that's the problem. We have a corrupt judiciary, a corrupt legislature in the Congress. We have corrupt officials in 8 states who say, pay no attention to the dead guy holding up the absentee ballot. Pay no attention to all those dead people on the rolls that voted. Pay no attention to people who showed up to vote in person. They're told they're already voted. Pay no attention to the thousands of affidavits alleging election irregularities. None of it happened. Move along. And not one reporter, not one person was allowed to go in and examine the records. Trump asked in a phone call, we want the Georgia records open. They're claiming confidentiality. Have Democratic and Republican people go in and examine those rolls with it, and they certify they will not divulge anything. A check off. If Joe Sixpack dies, and there's 10 Joe Sixpacks on their voting rolls, then they can find out which Joe Sixpack voted. Or Susie Cream Cheese died. They can see who Susie Cream Cheese voted. They got people who voted that have been dead for 100 years. Joe Frazier, the great heavyweight champ, voted. He's been dead for 2 or 3 or 4 years, but he voted in Pennsylvania. And the grandfather, I think it was the grandfather of actor Will Smith voted. He's been dead. This is the kind of corruption and fraud that's going on in this election. Dead voters voting. People who move out of states suddenly come back in and re-register and vote. And Georgia has laws against people leaving the state and coming back in to vote within so many days. I'm sure we'll find out after this election that people voted in Georgia illegally. It's happened in every other state. But nobody on the left, Biden, Harris, Schumer, Pelosi, not one Democrat will say we should investigate this. Maybe Manchin of West Virginia might. One minute he's leaning toward Republicans, the next minute he's leaning toward Democrats. He's talking about changing parties again. And he's supposedly very hated in West Virginia. I don't know much about West Virginia politics, but they used to have Robert Verd there. A clue. So, you have to speak up. You have to say this is not right. And now they're saying this destroys the integrity of the American voting process. No, it's already been destroyed. Because no one will ever vote again without questioning, is my vote going to be fairly counted? Or will it be taken away from me? And I'm not just talking about presidential election, voting for senator, voting for congressman, voting for state assemblyman, state senator, local propositions, mayors, city council, state propositions, school boards. Where does it stop? If one election can be rigged, they can all be rigged. And then there's no point to voting at all because the fix is in. The rubber stamp comes down, certified. And you're not allowed to say anything about it. We've decided that the election results are right. And if you say, that, hold on there's something wrong. Well, we're going to not listen to you, the public, who pays our salaries, who pays the salaries of election officials and poll workers. You had USPS drivers say there was something wrong with all these ballots being delivered in the dead of night. They signed affidavits to that effect. Oh, we can ignore those. They just work for the post office. And then Troll comes in here saying, I'm going to take down your channel for saying the truth. Whether or not you believe this election was rigged or not, enough people doubt this election now. Biden will never be trusted. He will never. They said for 4 years Trump is not a legitimate president. They said it for George W. Bush after he lost in the courts against Al Gore. But Bush was not a legitimate president. They're never legitimate to these people. And they did the Russiagate. Trump colluded with Russia, and $54 million later, Mueller said there's no evidence he colluded with anybody. But they're still throwing that out. They did it today. You know, and threatening to take down my channel. I can go on Twitch. I can go on other social media. I don't have to be on YouTube. There's other sites I can do video. I can do a video on Twitch right now if I set it up. Well, it's interesting. You can leak my phone number. Here's a guy threatening to leak my personal information. That's a violation of YouTube rules. So he's been blocked. See, they can't stand someone speaking the truth, so they have to make threats. They can't just shut down my channel because I can appeal it. There's no hate speech here. I'm not condoning taking over the Congress. But the American people who voted are fed up. Oh, Dr. Dre is in the hospital. Now I have a bit of personal news. It got down to 65 in here. Kathy is freezing in her apartment. I got a new loan for $500. I'll be less than paying the $300 I've been paying back to them. I pay $116 a month. So I'm buying Kathy. She's going to go in for half an electric blanket tomorrow. That should come here by next week. She'll be warm. That's the most important thing to me is Kathy and the cats. And then I'm going to order from Chewy all my cat supplies for 2 months, including a whole bunch of 40-pound bags of litter. I don't know where I'm going to put it all. But I don't have to go get cat food anymore. So there's two people I've never heard of before. They've never been on the channel. We're going to take your channel down. Evil trolls trying to suppress a YouTuber who just wants to speak what he thinks is the truth. The right to protest, the right to address grievances, the right to petition your representative. All of those things are rights in the Constitution. Nothing to do with me. You elect representatives to the Senate and the Congress, to your state legislatures, your governors and mayors and city councilmen and city managers, and you say there's something wrong. Something smells like a fish market here. And they ignore it. And the usual people that come in here are nowhere to be seen. Nowhere to be found. And this has been suppression for 10 years. I've had trolls come in and say I committed heinous acts, that I'm a con man and a fraud. None of it's true. The people that are supporters of me, that know me personally, that have talked to me on the phone, that have sent me donations, that send me supportive messages, they know who I am. I'm a decent, honest, caring person. Only the trolls who don't like, first of all, it's my politics. I know that. We just saw that. They can't stand that I'm a conservative Republican who supports Trump. Even though there were no Trump. Conservative means you conserve the country. You don't destroy it. You don't tear it down. We've already heard AOC saying she wants to transform America, just like Obama wanted to transform America. And what happened? The economy and the GDP went to hell. So, that's all I got to say. If I never do another video, I don't really care. I'll go to Twitch. I'm on another site where I can do podcasts. They can't shut down every dissenting point of view in this country, although they're going to try. You can bet that the Biden administration is going to attempt to suppress every conservative news network, every conservative commentator, every conservative radio host, because they can't stand alternate points of view that disagree with the official line. Because they don't believe in freedom of speech. It's only approved freedom of speech that they approve of. Anyone who dissents their point of view, their political point of view, their social point of view, their views about social justice, and all the other rot that they put out, their views on the environment, like they want to throw money at the United Nations to solve global warming. You want to solve global warming? Get China and India to stop doing their smokestack emissions. Beijing looks like downtown Pittsburgh in 1948. You can't breathe at noon. Get them to clean up their own act before you go after the United States. But they never do that. They never go to the foreign countries and say, you have to do something. But to do that, they claim as racist or xenophobic. You can't have one standard for one country and no standards for other countries. And if you give my number out, fine, I'll just change the number or shut the phone off. I only call 3 people in this world: Kathy, Paul, and someone else I know. And occasionally my friends in Minnesota who are both supporters of me, Justin and Jeremy. And a doctor. And credit card companies. I can block calls to my phone, you know. And that's an Android phone. It doesn't always block everything, but I get tons of spam messages every day from companies trying to sell me auto warranties. I don't have a car. Housing warranties. I don't have a house. Loans. And all kinds of scams and all kinds of spam emails. Alright, this is George Senda, the guy from Pittsburgh. Have a great day. Stay safe. And no matter what happens, protect the Constitution of the United States of America and our leaders, Democrat or Republican. I have no call for any violence against either one. I just want radical Democrats voted out of office, because they are, in the long run, are not helping this country. They're leading to its ruin. And I want free and fair elections, unfettered by officials who refuse to allow, as the Democrats and the left are fond of using the word transparency, and yet the transparency's blankets over windows in voting centers and no one can observe them. All right, that's it for this one. Bye-bye.